wait for more participants to come. Just tell me if you can hear me and my camera also is working. There is a chat on the right side of this webinar platform. You can type there. Okay, good. Moreover, if you have your microphone near you and connected to your computer, I can also allow you to say something if you want. Maybe when we go through the webinar, through the game analysis, you will want to suggest a different line or something like this, and then I can give you, I can allow your microphone to work, and you may suggest your line. Okay. Let's just wait a little bit, maybe 5 more minutes. Also, I would like to say that our webinar will be streamed on YouTube and also recorded. For example, if you miss the first part of the webinar or maybe the second part, you can watch it on YouTube on my account, or just let me know that you need the link to this record of this webinar and I'll provide you with it. Okay. Do you see the screen? Do you see the board now? Okay, fine. So we have only two participants for now, but I believe. Oh, William joined our lesson. Okay. Actually, we're waiting for at least one more, and then we'll start. Okay, anyway, let's start now. You see the position. So what we're gonna do today? We are going to analyze the game between Anatoly Karpov and Josif Dorfman. And this is the game, and we can use this game as an example of how to attack the king when it's uncastled. How to attack the king when it's located in the center, when black decides not to castle to the king side or the queen side. Of course, there are several ways and several plans that usually work in such type of positions, but today we are going to explore just only one of them. Okay, the first thing that I want to ask you, just tell me what's the most popular opening where you may meet an uncastled king. For example, imagine you're playing with white pieces and start the game with e4. What black can play so that you can meet the position where black decides not to castle? Okay, d5. So Scandinavian game, e4 and d5. Usually in such a case, black decides to castle queen side in some of the lines, or king side. No, it's about Sicilian defense. e4, c5, and it happens in many lines. Sometimes in Paulson or Kahn variation that we play, where our pawn is on e6 here. Sometimes we play h5, and we should use our rook on the h file, and it's okay to leave the king in the center, and or locate it to f8, for example. Also in French defense, e4, e6, d4, d5. In some lines of French defense, black doesn't really have to castle, and the king is safer in the center. And today we're going to analyze one of the lines of Sicilian defense. Okay, let's start. So here in this game, Anatoly Karpov was playing with white pieces, and Josif Dorfman, who is, by the way, who was very famous Soviet grandmaster. Now he is a French grandmaster. However, the game was played in 1976. Okay, e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes on d4, knight d4, just common Sicilian, knight f6, knight c3. And in this position, you know, there are several moves. For example, a6 is popular nowadays. This line is known as native variation, but g6 can be played. For example, this is dragon. But in this game, it was played e6. This opening also exists, and it's quite popular. However, people usually prefer to play this opening starting not with e6, but some of them with queen b6 move or knight c6, and then queen b6. Okay, anyway, e6 was played. And Anatoly Karpov played g4. This line is known as Carey's attack. This plan is very popular for a white who wants to succeed in Sicilian when white plays against Sicilian defense. The idea of this move is to put some pressure on the king side and also to get rid of the knight. Also maybe play h4, h5, and finally g6. Another idea is to play g5, then f4 and f5. Of course, the plan to play f4 and e5 also allows some advantage for white, but everything depends on the concrete position, because here we can't really play e5. In black tries to defend the square not only with this pawn, but with a few other pieces, like the knight on b8 or queen that comes to c7, and this knight comes to c6 usually. Okay, anyway, g4 is played. In the game, it was played bishop e7. It's a very typical move. However, the first question I want to ask you, what if e5? What black should do? If black just retreats with his knight, he loses the pawn on g4. How would you play in such a case? So what do you think white should play in this position after e5, where the knight on d4 is under attack? Knight b3. I see. Yeah, so sometimes, yes, we play knight b3, for example, in such lines as native variation, but here knight b3 is a bad move because the pawn on g4 is hanging. You see, e5 was played and it opened the bishop attack. So knight b3 doesn't work. What else? Of course, knight f5, yes. Otherwise, the pawn is taken on g4. Knight f5. And then if bishop f5, g takes on f5, and we have an attack on the g file here. Also, we may play f4 anytime we want, but I recommend to keep the position more closed. Your only task is just not to allow black to play d5. So something like bishop c4 should be played, and then you totally control the position and the game. Okay, instead of taking on f5 with his bishop, he may play g6, and then knight goes to e3 to control the d5 square. Then f3, and bishop comes to e3, but you continue playing on the king side, h4, h5. This is what you can typically do. So this position is in white favor. That's why in the game e5 wasn't played. It was bishop e7. However, another typical move is h6 to prevent g5, because bishop e7 is a possible move, but it allows white to get more advantage on the king side. G5, knight retreats to d7. H4, because the pawn was hanging. Knight c6. Bishop e3 to protect this knight. And e6. Okay, and now I want you to suggest a move for white, how to continue a white's pieces development. What do you think white should do here? You can suggest a move or a line or just a plan. Okay, queen g4. This is what Natalia suggested. What can I say about this move? I just don't understand the idea, because queen g4, you are not threatening to take on e6. H5 g6 is too early. I mean, queen g4, h5 g6 plan is too early, because you can't take, you can play g6, he takes with the h pawn, and your rook is pinned there. Queen g4 just to connect the rooks. I don't really like the position on g4. Why? Because one of the knights can go to e5 and attack, and of course, potentially e5 can be played. For example, queen g4. Then knight takes on d4, bishop takes on d4, and in some of these lines can be played e5, bishop, and then knight goes with a temper. I don't know where exactly, and maybe not immediately, but here the queen becomes the object of the attack. As for queen d2 move, here, queen d2. That's a typical move for such positions, but we usually play this move when we want just to castle inside. However, in this position, we assume the king standing in the center on e8. That's why it makes more sense to locate our queen on e2. So if any traits here on the files, then the e file can be opened, and we can potentially create discovery attack. So that's why here queen e2 makes more sense, and this is what Anatoly Karpov played. Well, as for the bishop, we'll keep it as it is on f1. this is the best thing that is recommended. Sometimes we may also play bishop h3, especially if we would like to increase the pressure on e6. For example, after f4, f5, or in some positions where black plays e5, we just want to get rid of this bishop's pair, just to trade them. Okay, queen e2, queen c7. This is what was played by black. What's the idea behind this move? What now black wants to do? Okay, it looks like no ideas behind this move. And of course, it's not about the e5 square, which is attacked 3 times by black pieces, 2 knights and the pawn. The queen is located here because black wants to play b5. And he can't play b5 right now with queen standing on d8, because in case of b5, the knight on c6 is hanging. And black doesn't really want to trade on d4 right now. Okay, queen c7, castle queenside, of course, b5, and in this position, Anatoly Karpov decided to take on c6, queen takes on c6, and tell me in this position, what should we do, and are we afraid of b5 move? So here it's obvious that black is going to play b4 in the second move. How to prepare, or maybe we can ignore b4 and play another move. What do you think? Okay, so okay, I see, Dadal, that you suggest that after b4, knight goes to a4, and it can be supported by the b pawn. But you can't move to, after b4, you can't move to a4. The queen is already on c6, attacking on e4. And if you suggest to play b3 right now, then you lose your knight on c3 immediately. Moreover, this pawn on e4 can be hanging. Of course, here a3 is one of the options, just a3 to prevent b4 move. But sometimes this move can cause the problems on the queen side, because black can play a5 and b4, open the a file and start the attack. Usually, if white is playing properly, white is faster in the center or on the king side, and a3 is not a mistake here. However, here Anatoly Karpov decided to play another move. He played bishop d4. Then it was played b4. And how would you play in this position? What do you think? What's Karpov's idea was here? Does he want to take on g7? Or move the knight to b1? What was the idea for white? Uh-huh. Okay, so knight b1. Okay. If bishop g7 here, then rook g8, and then you may realize that two of your pieces are hanging simultaneously, and you can save only one. So here black is winning. As for knight b1, it's too passive. For example, in this position, black can just castle king side. Okay, after b4, Anatoly Karpov prepared a knight d5 move, the sacrifice. And now you see why we needed our queen on the e file, not on the d file. Okay, before I make this move on the board, I just want you to find what white can do after e5 move. So now, what can white do? Just retreat. And after b4, this knight occupies the central square. So e5 was okay. In case of knight b6, bishop takes on b6, queen takes on b6, knight d5. And here, queen b7. By the way, how would you play in this position? Your knight on d5 is a really strong piece. However, this knight can be easily captured with this light squared bishop from e6 to d5. What do you think you should do for white in this position? With this knight, or maybe you can somehow prevent this knight attack. Yeah, you're right. Bishop h3 to trade the bishops. Okay, let's go back. Here, b4 and knight d5 was played by Anatoly Karpov. E takes on d5. Okay, and how to continue now? Take on d5 immediately or take on g7 first? What's the best option? Bishop g7. Yes, Dadal is correct right now because if we take on d5 right now, queen takes on d5, bishop g7 now, here we may notice that our rook here is hanging. However, it's not the end of the line. For example, then bishop capture is on h8, then queen h4. Bishop f6 doesn't really work because knight f6 and we take on f6. In this position, just one extra piece for black and it's winning. If instead of taking this rook on h8, white first plays this move, rook e1, threatening to give a checkmate on e5, then black replies with knight e5. Here, bishop e5, d takes e5, and queen e5 doesn't work. Can you please guess why what black can do in this position? Bishop e6. If bishop e6, I believe here white can do several things, including bishop b5 check and then take this queen. At least in this position, white has a perpetual check. Okay, yes, after queen e5, black just castles. Queen takes on e7, and after that, bishop e6, the game is over, extra rook, no chances for white to checkmate. So let's go back. That's why in this position, Here, we shouldn't take on we shouldn't take on d5. We should take on g7 first. Rook g8, e takes on d5 now. This pawn is protected by the rook. It's fine. Queen c7. And now the question for you, where to move your bishop, to f6 or d4? What do you think is better? f6. Oh, yeah, actually, f6 is much better because it has nothing to do on d4. By playing this move, we reinforce this attack, because if knight f6, g takes on f6, we win a piece back and get a better position, and of course we have extra pawn here. Okay, so bishop 6. Okay, now tell me, how many moves does black have here to defend against a checkmate? And what are these moves? Okay, so one of them is 95. As for knight f6, yes, maybe, but we already analyzed this move and we know what it can lead to. So 95, what other moves does black have to defend? Yeah, good morning, Elliot. I'm glad that you joined us. So please suggest what black can do here to protect his king against the checkmate queen e7. So 95 is not the only option. Of course, there are several moves. Queen d8, right. One more. King f8 doesn't work. Knight f8 maybe. However, I don't think we should analyze. Okay, actually, let's analyze knight f8 too. Knight f8. Then no, I think we can play just h5 first. Then maybe rook a7 to protect on e7, but white's plan is quite clear. Rook h4 here, rook e4 to triple on the e file and just capture on e7. The best thing that black can do is to sacrifice a piece. As for king f8 move, it doesn't work because queen e7 immediately. Okay, knight c5, this is the third one. Let's just cover them. Queen d8. In this case, we play this move, knight e5. And how would you continue for white in this position? Should we take on e5 or maybe on e7? f4. Yeah, f4 is one of the best options. One of them is bishop e7 move, but let's play f4. This is a good move. Then, for example, he moves. If he moves the knight to g6, we play h5. Okay. Yeah, here f4, bishop e7, and then f4. Several moves. Queen e4, I don't really understand what's the idea behind queen e4. Just to take on h7. And what then? Rook comes to f8, and you spend too many tempers. Queen e4 doesn't really work. Okay. So knight c5, another possible continuation, but here we play rook e1, rook a7, and this is where I want you to suggest a move. How to continue the attack. Queen h5, that makes sense. Okay, or rook h3 for rook a3. Yes, you are almost right. So bishop h3 here to take on c8, or if he takes, then we take with our rook, and rook comes to e3. If we take on c8, we distract his queen. Oh, I can just go through this line quickly. King f8, but still rook a3, and this is a pin, because if he takes, he gets a checkmate, for example, like this. And then queen f3. This is a checkmate. Okay, let's go back. If here our king comes to h8, it's easy. We just trade on g8 and then play queen e8. As for queen h5 move, yeah, this is the strong move too. Then, for example, queen a5, queen takes h7, rook f8, bishop c4 protecting here. And then we just need to increase the pressure to double on the e-file, then the game will be over. Okay, so that's why knight e5 was played. The most strong move in this position. Bishop e5, d takes on e5, f4. And what if e takes on f4? How to continue this position for white? Yeah, after d6, he has to resign because of this pin, and queen can't capture on d6 because our rook is on d1. f4, bishop f5 was played in the game. And how would you play in this position? How would you continue the attack? Does it make sense to take on e5? Yes, actually, I'm not sure that Anatoly Karpov calculated this line when he sacrificed the knight on d5. I'm sure he did it, used his intuition, and he wasn't sure in the success. He just understood that he can increase the pressure, and maybe he thought black was likely to make a mistake because it's difficult to defend the position. during the whole game. Okay, as for d6, bishop d6. So what's the idea? d6, bishop takes d6. What then? If f takes on e5 now, just bishop e7. And you are down a piece. Of course, you have two pawns as a compensation, but it's not enough because you have a weakness on c2 here. Black is better. d6 doesn't work. What about f takes on e5? Looks like a possible continuation. Then threatening play d6, of course. Then rook c8. And if now you push the pawn to d6, it would be a huge mistake because of queen c2. Queen has to take rook c2, king b1, and then black has a discovered attack. He can play rook h2. King c1, rook h1. Bishop b5, for example. A takes on b5, rook takes on h1. And in this position, black has two extra bishops and wins. Okay, so f takes on e5, rook c8, and here we may play rook h2 to protect on c2 first. For example, queen a5, then we play, actually we can do anything, for example, play queen f3 here. I taken the bishop and threatening to play d6. If queen a2, then queen takes f5. And after this check on e1, just king goes to d2. Here, the queen protects on c2. Okay, f takes on e5 was a possible move. However, in the game it was played bishop h3, but let's just quickly check queen h5. Queen h5. Sorry, this move cannot be played. This is a checkmate. So bishop h3 to get rid of the light squared bishop. Bishop takes h3. Rook takes h3, rook c8 to increase the pressure to the c2 pawn. And now the queen on the 2 is tied down to that pawn. F takes on e5, queen c4. And another question for you now. Should we trade the queens or not? And if not, then which move to play? Yeah, of course, you're absolutely right. We shouldn't trade the queens because we should exploit his king's weakness, and we can do it. We have more chances to succeed in case if queens are on the board. But which move to play? Now our queen is hanging, so we can't play d6 right now. Or you mean sacrifice it? Okay, d6, queen e2, d7, king d8. We take on c8, but it doesn't work. Of course, not d6. About rook h to d3. Oh, here. Yes, this move makes sense, and maybe it's one of the best moves here. Rook h to d3, threatening to play d6. However, I want to suggest another move, queen f2. What's the idea? Here we cover all the dark squares. For example, there is no queen f4 check, the pawn here is protected, and we are threatening to play e6 or d6. For example, here he takes on a2, d6, queen a1 check, king d2, queen b2, threatening to take on c2 on the next move with his rook. We play king e1, rook takes on c2. Oh, rook c6 is another option, but okay, let's see what can happen in case of rook c2. Then we play d7, king f8, check. King, oh, if he takes, it's easy, rook d8 and queen f6. Here, queen f6, and then rook d8. This is a checkmate. Rook c2 doesn't work. If rook c6, here we should play queen f4. Now queen takes on c2 and just rook h to d3, threatening to take on e7 and then penetrate his camp with our rooks. Okay, let's go back. So two good moves, rook h to d3 and queen f2. However, here Anatoly Karpov made a mistake, and that mistake could cost him a half of a point. Because now the position is very close to equality, and black can look for some chances for a perpetual check. In the game, he played queen f4. However, I want to ask you, what should you do after rook g5? Why I suggested rook g5 move for black, because I want to get the bishop involved into the attack, because now it's black who attacks white king. Okay, so rook g5, h takes g5, queen a2. Here I want to ask you, what would you do in this position? Because he's threatening to take on g5, then play queen e1. That can potentially lead to checkmate. Okay, queen g4, one of the options, and yes, this is a good move. Not the best one, but this move allows white to keep the advantage. Then, for example, rook c4, queen f5, because the rook was hanging, we had to play with our rook, I mean black. If so, then queen a1, king d2, and queen b1. Taking on c2 with a hope for a perpetual check. Well, actually, rook just to g3 to protect the pawn, because the pawn wasn't really protected by our queen. This case, our queen is overloaded. It has to protect too many weaknesses on c2 and g5. So we just move our rook, and queen now protects c2, while our d rook protects on g5. And here white is better. All right, but this is a risky line. However, we could just play d6 instead. And this position, rook g3, another option. Yeah, this is another move. Okay, but d6. He gives a check on a1. Wait, no, first bishop takes here, and we block with our rook, threatening to play d7. And if queen a1, king d2, this is a useless check. Rook c4, d7, king d8, queen f3 to get to a8 and then promote a pawn. Here bishop takes on e3. And now we're ready to check on g5 and promote pawn. Queen e1, king d2. Rook d2 doesn't work. There is no perpetual check. Now after king d2, no more checks, and that's why this line with rook g5 move doesn't work. What if queen a2? If queen a1, we escape. So that's d6. Rook c4. Well, queen e1 doesn't make sense. Rook c4, just move the rook, because after d7, it was a fork. Now after d7, king d8. Here, d captured on e7, for example, we may play queen e1 check. Oh, if king e7, if king takes on e7 here, we may play just e6. And if he takes this pawn, then just queen e5. Queen f6 or queen d6, these are our next moves. Or rook d6, for example. Okay. Here, queen e1, king d2. And if he now takes on e7, we should play rook d7 check. King d7, queen c4. Then we are going to join our second rook to the attack, and here we checkmate faster. Okay, let's go back to the game. So rook d2, d3 was played, queen f4 check, king b1, rook c4 to get the rook to e4, maybe to attack the e5 square. At the same time, the rook on c8 was in a bad position because of d6 and d7 options. Anyway, here white plays d6. Rook a4, then rook h to e3. Otherwise, we lose a pawn on e5. Rook takes e3. Rook takes on e3. And now I want to ask you, what's the best move for black in this position? Bishop is hanging, and if pawn takes bishop, then white has two extra pawns. Think about what you may play in this position for black to be able to equalize the position. So what do you think? Bishop d8 maybe, or actually, by the way, what if bishop d8, for example, here? If bishop d8 here, we may play rook f3, queen d4 to use the weakness of our back rank e6. If he takes, then queen 6 leads to a checkmate. Queen g1 doesn't work because here we are able to block on f1 with our rook. That's fine. Okay. Okay, actually, how to play after queen g4? What do you think? Now e6 still works. Of course, if queen e6, we play rook e3. If f takes on e6, rook f8 doesn't work, but just d7. And then we can use our rook and get to the 7th rank, give a check. Oh, let me show you. For example, king e7, here we play rook f7. He takes, but we take the queen. And okay, let's go back. So here, instead of bishop d8, Elliot was right, queen h4, this is the best option. And how to continue for white? Because if we just take on e7, he is likely to give a check on the back rank, then queen e1. Queen takes on e1, rook takes on e1, rook g5, or actually king e7. Rook g5 I think is better. And after that, king e7 on the next move. And now it's black who is playing for a victory in this position. That's why how to continue after queen h4 move. What do you think? Queen d1, then maybe bishop g5. No, queen d1, the idea to cover the back rank is correct, but it's not an attacking move. That's why queen f3, this is what I suggest, with the idea to get to a8 to check the enemy king. And if now bishop takes on g5, queen goes to e8. No, queen e8 doesn't work here, e6 should be played. e6 threatening to play queen f7. For example, f takes on e6. Rook takes e6 check, and after he escapes, we join our queen. So like king d7, queen f7, then d7 check, queen f5, then rook e4, or actually here b3 is enough. b3, king c3, queen 3. This is a checkmate. That's why queen g5. He still wants to give a checkmate on the back rank. Here we have to play with our rook. We cover the back rank. At the same time, our rook on e3 is not hanging. What if queen g1 now? Then you see we may play queen c6 check. And if he moves the king to f8 or d8, if d8, then we checkmate. If king goes to f8, then here a queen c8. He goes to the g file, and now he loses his queen. In the game, it was played queen g2. Again, we don't trade the queens. We play queen f5, threatening to play queen c8, rook g6, rook f1, and now to attack on f7, queen d5. And now it makes sense to capture this bishop. King takes on e7, queen e4, attacking on b4, because if we win a pawn, this endgame is winning. So what Anatoly Karpov did? Of course, he made a mistake by playing rook d to d3. You remember I told you, if not this mistake, he would win already. But his position is still better. He passed the game into this endgame where he can exploit Black King's weakness and get extra pawn, then maybe trade queens or trade rooks and just win this game. a5, queen h4 check, winning the pawn on h7. Queen f3, if rook takes, then it's a back rank checkmate. Queen h8, king e7. And how to play in this position for white? Our rook is hanging. What should we do? Should we play with our rook or do something else? What do you think? Unfortunately, rook takes on f3 doesn't work because of because of rook g1 checkmate. Yes, queen h4 check. This is the best option. King e8, and then we just relocate our queen to c4. At the same time, we want to play queen c8 and protect our rook on f1, and his queen is hanging. And if queen moves, f7 is hanging. Of course, queen moves to b7 to protect on f7. b3, just an escape square for the king. Rook e6, rook g1 to get to g8, and then to use dark squares. And this is where Josif Dorfman played a bad move. He took pawn e5, but that was a poisoned pawn because of rook g8, here king e7, and then queen h4. In the game it was king to d7, but after king e6, how to play? Try to find a winning move in this position. Yes, it's rook e8. rook e8, and if king comes to f5, then we just check with our queen on h5 and simply take on e5. If not king f5, but king d6, then we check on d8 with our queen. He has to move and leave his rook unprotected. And if he goes to d5, we just play queen h1, winning the queen. Okay, what if he goes to d6? How to continue now for white? Queen f6. Queen f6 might work, but then rook e6. Queen e6, rook e6. And if you check with rook d8, he goes to c5 maybe. Or c6. c6. Oh, no, not c6, but c5. So queen f6 doesn't work. I'm not sure about rook d8. Rook d8 is slightly better, but queen d4, this is the best option. If now king back to e6, then rook e8 check, winning the rook on e5. If here queen to d5, then rook d8 check. If rook goes to d5, it's still a check on d8. King has to move to e6. This is the only square, and then just queen e4. And now he can't use his rook to block on e5 because he loses his queen on b7. He has to move with his king to f6, and at least he loses the rook on d5. Okay, king d7, that's why this move was played. Queen f6, attacking both rook and pawn, and rook e1 doesn't make sense. King goes to here. Queen h1 doesn't work too, because then king b2, rook e7, queen f5, and we take another pawn. Then the position becomes really winning with no chances for black. The b4 is hanging too. And the game it was played rook e7. Queen f5, king d6, queen takes on a5, rook e5 attacking this queen, queen d8, king e6, and now please tell me what white can do in this position, how to win. Queen c8 to trade the queens. And what? Because sometimes the end game with extra pawn, I mean the rook end game with extra pawn can be drawish. I think queen c8, this is what black wants white to play. Of course, it decreases white chances to win. Rook e8. Rook e8, I think, is a strong move. However, rook h8 is the best option here. Because if you play rook e8 here, king escapes to f5. It's still a winning position, but after queen d3, queen e4, and what then? So rook h8, this is the best option with the idea to use the 6th rank to check the enemy king. However, Anatoly Karpov played king b2, and it was enough to win 2. f6, rook f8 attacking on f6, then queen g7. And now please find the winning move. After 2 moves, black resigned. Now here you have to calculate several lines, but I just want you to notice that black king want to escape from e6 to f5. This is a key. Yeah, queen c8 now. Queen c8 now, and he plays this move. Then we can play rook e8, rook d8, or just rook f6. That's why here he plays king to d5, queen c4, and this is where black resigned. Here the only move is king d6, and just tell me why he resigned, how white would continue and win this game. Yes, rook d8 and queen c7, right. King e7, queen c7, and winning the queen on g7. Okay, good. We finished with the game analysis. However, I believe that game was tough for Anatoly Karpov. He didn't play the best moves, but his general idea was really good, and he just made one inaccuracy, I think. However, if you sacrifice a piece, you should play accurately. Otherwise, you may risk to lose the game. Okay, we finished with the game analysis, but we didn't discuss what plans work for such type of positions where black leaves his king in the center and decides not to castle. One of this plan to sacrifice a piece and open the file was analyzed in this game here. However, of course, there are at least two more plans. Of course, everything depends on the concrete position, but usually when we play against an uncastled king, we should open the position in the center. Anatoly Karpov played it with knight sacrifice in the center. However, usually we play something like this, f4, f5, try to get rid of the e6 pawn. Another option is to play h5 and g6. It weakens the e6 pawn too. And in some cases where black plays h6 early, for example, and we don't play g5 too early, we play it later. After this trade, we open the h files, and we may trade a rook pair, then use our other rook to get into the back, into his camp to the back rank, maybe capture his pawns, or even to deliver a checkmate. So 3 possible plans. To open the position with a piece sacrifice, like Anatoly Karpov did, open the position with a pawn trade by playing something like f5, or maybe h5, g6, weakening the pawn on e6, or The third plan is to open the H file or the G file and just penetrate the enemy camp with our routes. Okay, that's all what I wanted to tell you on this webinar. Do you have any questions? Actually, there is a question and answers mode you may write there or just here in the chat. Okay, so the question is if there is a general rule about how to attack the king standing in the center. So the general rule is just try to open the position, and then you can use all his weaknesses. I mean, so you can exploit the position of the king standing in the center when you have an open center. Yeah, so if you can calculate at the line where you sacrifice a piece, then you may sacrifice a piece. However, recently I played a game in a similar position, and because I remember this game with knight d5 sacrifice, I was calculating this move every move. However, when knight d5 sacrifice became possible, I just missed it. So it's really difficult to find the moment to sacrifice a piece to be sure that this sacrifice works. Usually it's recommended to work with your pawns to play something like f5 and get rid of the e6 pawn, or just make the pawn a weakness. Okay, fine. If there are no questions, let's finish the webinar. However, I want you to know that I'm going to conduct such webinars every Sunday this time. And you may join. If you have any questions, you may send me an email. So let me write my email here. tricksofchess@gmail.com. You may suggest topics, games to analyze, time of webinar, everything. If, for example, you want the webinar to be conducted on any other day, not on Sunday, just let me know. Maybe we'll find more people who wants to participate in such a webinar during working days. Okay, fine. Thank you for your attention. We'll continue next Sunday.